Hey Mike, did you ever watch the show Breaking Bad?
I did. I was a big fan of that show.
Yeah, you know, people think that show is like, completely fiction, but quite frankly, that's really New Mexico.
It's just New Mexico.
Mm-hmm. Hoi vey, hi everyone, welcome to today's badge cam lesson here on Active Self-Protection. We're so glad you're here and have joined us. I'm your host as always, John Correa.
And I'm your co-host, Mike Williver. Today's video comes to us from Espanola, New Mexico.
The Filster Enigma is a revolutionary holster chassis system that completely divorces your holster and gun from your clothing, giving you unprecedented concealment whether in sweatpants or formal wear. It attaches to your AIWB holster via the wing and allows incredible flexibility for your concealed carry. Get yours at the link below.
Officers are responding here to a bunch of calls into dispatch from motorists who see a guy who was pulled over on the wrong side of the road with his pickup truck kind of half sitting into one of the lanes, and officers are responding to figure out what's going on with this guy. Let's find out.
He has a what? He does? Whoa, don't reach for nothing, bro. Don't reach for it. Put it down. Put it down.
Put it down! Shots fired, 10 through the air. Hands down!
Get out! Get out with your hands in the air!
Hands up now!
Get out!
Get out of the truck now! Step away from the weapon now!
Lay down.
The sergeant did hit this guy and he was arrested, taken to the hospital. They did tend his wounds and he made it. And he is facing a charge of aggravated assault against the police officer. The judge has released this man on his own recognizance under the conditions that he not touch firearms and that he not drive while taking his medication. You know, this guy survived his injuries, but I don't think they've asked him, baby, what is you doing? Why would you do that? I guess maybe we don't want to know. I mean, I want to start with the fact that this is kind of one of those weird calls, right? As an officer, you never know how the shift is going to go. And you got a guy here, and so my first thought here is we probably have an intoxicated driver, right? You got somebody who pulled over on the wrong side of the road, who's probably loopy. Hi, officer, how are you? But those guys can be unpredictable. So my one thing here to officers would be take every evolution and every time you pull somebody over as a training opportunity and do it the right way, because you never know when things are gonna go weird.
Look, as a domestic civilian law enforcement officer, you're not a Marine, right? But a great man once said, be polite, be professional, have a plan to kill everyone you meet. Now, I don't think that really applies to law enforcement, but what does apply to law enforcement is there's an above average chance that people that you meet want to kill you, and you're not going to always see it coming. It's not always going to be a hot call. It's not always going to be a man with a gun. Sometimes it's just something random like this. This kind of call goes out 100 times a day in every big city across the country. There's just some guy who's drunk, or he's having a medical emergency, or whatever, and he's on the wrong side of the road, and people call in, and you get there. You have to, I'm not saying be paranoid, right? I'm saying be prepared. And be ready for the possibility that this is not what it looks like. It's something much, much worse. Because as we go forward in the video, if the people on the side of the road hadn't warned him, this might have gone very differently.
And I mean, so that's an interesting thing we got to talk about is, okay, we get this guy and we're investigating. What the heck is going on here? It could be a medical emergency, right? So I got to get in there and figure it out. I think the officer does a really good job of just getting in there and figuring it out. And then all of a sudden here in the bling of the sundown, you've got a couple of bystanders who are like, he has a rifle in the vehicle. And you know, the first couple times I watched this, Mike, I'm like, what the heck is going on here? Is this like, did Michael Landon just show up? Hey, if you get that dated pop culture reference, by the way, you need to schedule your colonoscopy. But, again, is this an angel from heaven who just showed up, or just like a couple of maintenance workers from this place? But they had some good intel, and so that was good.
Yeah, and if you notice later on, after the camera pans back over, they're not there anymore. Actually, that's not true. They probably are there. But unless they skedaddled when the gunfire started, yeah, I really want to drive this home. The average call, a lost kid, a disabled motorist, anything could be a really bad day, and you won't know until you get there. But just have that in the back of your mind, no matter what the call is. Hey, this can go bad. Let me pay attention, at least until I get my bearings and see what the heck's going on here.
And that might take you a second, right? You got your sergeant who showed up with you, great. And thank God for this intel. Thank God that it showed up to him and he's able to see, wait a minute, there's something kind of weird here because he could have been behind the power curve here in a hurry. So listen, good idea as a bystander. Recognize, I do like that these bystanders stayed away. I mean, granted that they're not angelic beings sent from the Lord on high or something, okay? That they kind of kept their distance, told the officer what they saw, and then stayed the heck out of the way. Good job on that one for the private citizens. Now, I know some folks are gonna be like, well, wait a minute, why did he draw a gun on him? Well, he's just heard a report that the dude has a rifle in this car, and then you can see the barrel of the rifle through the windshield. And so once I start seeing somebody reaching around inside a car that I have reliable reports that somebody else has seen him with a rifle inside that car, I have zero problems with the officer with a gun in hand here. And I even notice that it appears to me that he's got his muzzle probably a little bit depressed here, so he's not pointing a gun at him. And so I think that's actually good tactics.
Listen, officers watching this, burn this image into your mind right now, because this guy just pulled up, got out of the car, walking over to this vehicle. Within a span of 3 seconds, he goes from this is a drunk driver or maybe a medical emergency to, by the way, he's got a rifle, and he starts manipulating the rifle, he starts handling the rifle, and now you're in a deadly force situation. It happens just that fast. This is why, when I talk about constantly, probably to your annoyance, I talk about having conversations with yourself and with your God, with talking to yourself about, hey, can I do this job? Hey, am I prepared to take a human life in the blink of an eye? And maybe not have 100% clarity of the situation, maybe to have 100% of the information I'd like to have before I make that decision, because that's what it's like being a cop. You have to make these decisions very quickly, and frequently you don't have weeks of planning. You're walking up to a call completely cold. Fortunately, the bystanders were there. Fortunately, this officer responded quickly. Up to this point, I did a pretty good job. Look, there's no reason for the guy in the truck, no matter what condition he's in, to be handling a rifle, so I'm 100% fine with having a gun pointed at him right here.
Now guy is pointing, or he's at least taking the rifle outside the window. And I know some folks are gonna say, well, but John, he didn't necessarily point it at the officers. You ain't got time to mess with that stuff. You don't have any idea what he's gonna do with it. But when a police officer showed up with the reds and blues turn in and is pointing a gun at you and saying, don't touch the rifle, and then you put it out the window, oh, you mean this rifle, officer? You should expect to get shot.
I know it seems lately a little bit like John and I are sort of pole vaulting over mouse turds when it comes to this sort of thing. We had another case where in surprise, Arizona, where the officers walk in and within a split second of walking into a DV situation, the guy's armed himself with a shotgun and this officer has to act quickly because you don't have the luxury of waiting for the exact perfect moment. He can't wait for this guy to lower the rifle all the way and level it at this officer's chest, because guess what? That rifle almost certainly is going to go through body armor. He has to act now. The problem is he didn't act right away. It was the sergeant who acted first, and I think John wanted to touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, so the sergeant here obviously has been around the block a few times and probably, again, has enough experience that he's not surprised why this is going, and he just fills this guy in, fires 4 times. Whereas, Officer Garcia here, he turns around and flees, and he's kind of heading back. Now, I'm gonna say this, if you ever do some research on what's called recognition prime decision making, right? Then what'll happen is the first idea that you have in your head that works, that is feasible in a situation, you under adrenal stress, you will grab and go, even if it's not the best idea. The best idea is Officer Garcia had a gun in his hand, fill this guy in right now. That would have been the best one, but in his mind he said, oh no, I need to go and find cover. And so he did. Was that the best decision? No. Was it a wrong decision? No, it wasn't a terribly wrong decision, especially if he's got partners who can get from a better position and get some fire on target. But recognize the lower your stress levels are, if you're not in an adrenalized state, then recognition prime decision making doesn't hold you back from making the better decision. So a higher level of training, maybe even a higher level of awareness of who you are, keeping your heart rate down, might help you to not have those in those situations.
Now I'm going to go back to the boring conversations I always talk about. If you've had the conversation in your head as a law enforcement officer, can I do this? Can I take a life? Can I injure someone terribly in order to prevent the loss of innocent life or the loss of my life or my partner's life? If you've had that conversation and the answer is, I don't know, find another job. Now, I'm not saying that's what's happening here. I'm not saying that's what this officer is suffering from, but it seems to me like he had every reason to fire at this person in the truck and did not, and then retreated, which was very strange to me. But that's his decision he made. And then it looks like either he doesn't have a round in the chamber, or he decided to work the action and chamber around and eject around. We don't know exactly what he did here, but this is bad. This is bad all day long. If you're a law enforcement officer on duty or off duty, You need to be proficient enough with your weapon that you have a round in the chamber at all times, and you know how to safely handle that firearm in that condition. If you're not feeling like you can have a loaded, charged firearm on your hip at all times as a law enforcement officer, you've got a big problem, and you need to get with your firearms instruction staff and fix it ASAP.
And listen, if he just didn't know, if he was like, I'm not sure my gun is loaded, I was doing some dry fire earlier today or something, hey, you should never leave the house with a gun on your person that you're not 100% sure. We have instances on our second channel, Active Self-Protection Extra, on how to successfully and safely press check your firearm to make sure that it's in a loaded condition. And I think that there's a possibility here that what he's doing is just nervously doing something. Okay, I gotta look for something to do, and so I'm gonna charge this gun. Now, I didn't see a round come out, so I think maybe it would have been an unloaded gun. And we call an unloaded gun a dead man's gun, and we've got instances on the channel of plenty of people dying because they had an unchambered gun and had to go and chamber it. Thankfully, he had the sergeant with him who handled the problem that was in front of him. And they stopped. Okay, so they see the guy, he has tossed the rifle out, and so they stopped shooting at him. I think that excellent decision making, and it really tells me that that sergeant, I think, has been around the block a few times, kind of, has his feces cohesive, as it were, his poop in a group. And then both of these officers are then going to close in on this guy and make a quick shift from I got to defend my own life and my community to I need to get this guy into custody so I can start medical care on him. And this guy actually owes his life to these officers who gave him medical care before the paramedics arrived. And I think, Mike, they really should get commended for that.
Concur. And let this also be a lesson here. Look, this guy's bleeding pretty bad. You know, that thing John talks about, we're like, this is icky, you probably need to address it quickly, need to pack it or tourniquet it or whatever the case may be. And in this case, this guy looks like he's bleeding to death, right? He didn't bleed to death, folks. So this is why immediate medical care is so critical. That we had to shoot him, right? We had to shoot him because he was starting to level a rifle at us. But once the shooting's over, and once you realize, okay, this guy's not armed anymore, and you can get in there and help him and not wait around for a TAC team and a SWAT team and a Bearcat and all that stuff, go and do that. If you can keep the guy alive, the aftermath for you, the officer, in this case, the sergeant, is gonna be a lot better because you didn't actually have to kill anybody because you managed to save their life in the aftermath. At the end of the day, these officers handled their business and covered their ass.